I speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow.
The order did not arrive with a public ceremony, a palace balcony appearance, or even a carefully prepared family discussion. It came inside a sealed folder, placed before King Charles during a private morning meeting. One signature would sever Harry from the final military symbols that still connected him to royal service. Another name was already waiting on the transfer papers: William, and when the king lowered his pen, the future of both brothers changed at once. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles sat in silence as the final page rested beneath his hand. Military patronages are official royal links to regiments and service organizations, giving one family member the duty to represent them at ceremonies, support their people, and carry the sovereign's trust. For Harry, those roles were never empty honors. They were tied to training, deployment, loyalty, and the rare part of his life that felt earned beyond palace walls. The king read the final paragraph twice. Then he signed the immediate order transferring Harry's remaining military patronages and ceremonial responsibilities to Prince William, effective at once. Charles placed the pen beside the folder and said, "There can be no uncertainty after today." No one answered. The monarch had not approved a temporary replacement. He had ended Harry's official military representation completely. William received the news in another room. The prince opened the briefing, studied each appointment, and felt no victory. Every new responsibility carried the shape of something taken from his younger brother. He knew the regiments needed active royal leadership, yet he also understood that accepting the roles would be seen as another moment when the heir gained what Harry had lost. Harry learned the decision through a direct palace message before the internal announcement moved through royal offices. He read the first sentence, stopped, and returned to it as though the wording might shift. It did not. A clause barred him from informally representing the affected organizations at future commemorations, even when his personal military history remained central to the occasion. The closed door was now unmistakable. Charles had chosen clarity over compromise. William had inherited a burden disguised as honor, and Harry had been separated from the symbols that once gave him purpose. But the deepest wound was not the transfer itself. It was the reason the king had finally decided that only one son could carry those duties forward. To understand why one signature struck Harry so deeply, the story must move beyond uniforms and titles, and into the painful history binding a father and his two sons forever. For Charles, the folder contained a constitutional decision. For William, it contained a burden. But for Harry, it contained memories. The sound of boots on gravel, the faces of soldiers who had treated him as one of their own, and the rare feeling that his purpose had been earned rather than inherited. Three men saw the same order differently. One saw duty, one saw responsibility, and one saw the final removal of the man he had once been. Harry sat alone after reading the palace message, and the silence around him felt heavier than anger. During military service, he had found discipline, loyalty, and belonging far from the pressures of royal birth. Those years mattered because soldiers judged him by whether he could endure, serve, and stand beside them, not by where he stood in the line of succession, the formal order deciding who may inherit the throne. Harry remembered a former commanding officer speaking to him after a difficult exercise. The officer had said, "Service created a bond no palace dispute could erase." Now that memory hurt. The bond remained personal, but the patronages representing it had been removed, leaving him with the past while another man carried its public meaning. William felt that weight immediately. His own military experience had prepared him for discipline and command, yet every stage of it had also pointed toward kingship. When he told Catherine that accepting the patronages felt like entering a room Harry had been forced to leave, she noticed something painful. He kept calling them Harry's appointments, never his own. Catherine listened without interrupting, then told him that duty could still wound the person carrying it. William looked again at the briefing and found a handwritten note from Charles. The king had instructed him not merely to hold the roles, but to restore confidence around them. Those words suggested a deeper concern, something larger than rivalry between brothers. Charles met Camilla after the signing and closed the door behind them. The queen consort asked whether the change truly had to begin at once. He glanced toward the sealed folder and answered that delay would only turn clarity into another family negotiation. She understood that he was not speaking as a father alone. The king had resisted a complete transfer for years, because he knew military identity was central to Harry's sense of worth. Yet something had broken that hesitation. Charles had crossed a line he once feared crossing. William had accepted a duty he never wanted in this form, and Harry had lost the last official bridge to the life that made him feel whole. That incident took place during a military remembrance ceremony, where one unexpected demand turned a private disagreement into an irreversible test of royal authority. Every royal rupture has a moment that later becomes impossible to forget. In this story, it was not a televised interview or a furious argument behind palace doors. It happened before a remembrance ceremony, when Harry made one request that Charles believed crossed the boundary between personal history and sovereign authority. The exchange lasted less than 10 minutes. No voices were raised. Yet when the door opened, the king had already begun considering a decision he had resisted for years. Harry had been invited to a remembrance service at St. George's Chapel as a family member, not an official military representative. The service honored the dead, while ceremonial uniform meant military dress worn by someone acting with recognized authority. Palace officials designed a narrow compromise. He could attend with the family and have his service acknowledged, but he could not wear uniform or perform an official duty. Harry rejected that boundary hours before the ceremony. He asked to appear in uniform and lay the principal wreath for one former patronage, an official link between a royal and a military organization. Charles refused because the act now belonged to a working representative of the crown, someone authorized to perform duties for the monarch. The small antechamber held no aides or cameras. Harry placed the order of service on the table, tapped the line carrying another royal's name and said, "You are asking me to watch someone else stand where I served." Charles did not raise his voice. He answered that military service belonged to his son's history, but official representation belonged to the institution. Harry felt the calmness as a deeper wound than anger. To him, the king had separated sacrifice from honor with one careful sentence. He left without attending the service, and his empty seat drew questions from senior officers who expected him there. Palace staff offered private explanations, but the absence became impossible to ignore. William entered afterward and found Charles staring at the untouched program. The prince asked what had happened. His father looked down and said, "Can any arrangement survive if every boundary becomes another battle?" William heard exhaustion in the monarch's voice, but he also recognized resolve. Charles acted that evening. He ordered a complete review of every military patronage connected to Harry, turning one dispute into the first formal step toward removal. The review might have remained quiet and gradual, but Harry learned of it, demanded one final meeting, and forced the family toward a confrontation none could soften. What followed was not a discussion about protocol. It became a confrontation over loyalty, identity, and whether a son could separate his service from the crown that had once authorized it. The meeting began with formal language and ended with a sentence neither man could withdraw. Harry entered believing the review could still be stopped. Charles entered knowing the order was nearly complete. Between them lay a single page listing every regiment, association, and ceremonial duty at risk. When the Duke pushed the paper back across the table, he was not arguing for status. He was defending the last part of royal life he still believed truly belonged to him. Harry had demanded a private audience the moment he learned palace advisors were reviewing his military patronages. A private audience is a closed meeting with the sovereign, usually without public access or outside witnesses. Once the door shut, every aide left. Only father and son remained, facing a decision that had already begun to harden. Charles spoke carefully. He said the review was not a judgment on courage, sacrifice, or military service. The problem was authority. Someone outside active royal duty could not continue representing the sovereign through official appointments, because those roles required attendance, accountability, and a clear public voice. Harry pointed toward the transfer list. William's name appeared beside every position. His restraint broke. "You can remove my place in the palace, but you cannot rewrite what I gave in uniform." Charles tightened his hands around the chair and answered, "I am not rewriting your service. I am deciding who now carries the responsibility." The words landed like a final separation. Harry saw the old pattern again. The heir received what the younger brother lost. William would gain the ceremonies, the regiments, and the public honor, while he would keep only memories. Charles saw something different. He saw a monarchy that could not leave military organizations trapped between personal loyalty and official uncertainty. Harry leaned forward and asked whether William had requested the patronages. Charles answered immediately. No, the future king had warned, during a documented private briefing, that transferring everything at once could permanently damage the brothers' relationship. That truth stopped Harry for a moment, but it did not soften him. Charles then revealed the pressure behind the review. Senior military representatives had privately written to the palace asking for permanent clarity. They respected Harry's record, but they needed one authorized royal who could attend, speak, and act on their behalf without confusion. Harry rose before his father finished. He did not accept the explanation, and Charles did not call him back. Outside the room, William was waiting. Their eyes met. Neither brother moved toward the other. The father had delivered the decision, but the next emotional blow would come when Harry faced the brother whose name now stood where his own had been removed. William had spent his life preparing to inherit responsibilities, but this inheritance felt different. It came not from succession, ceremony, or the natural passage of time. It came from a fracture inside his own family. When Harry emerged from the king's room, the brothers stood only a few feet apart, yet the silence between them carried years of accusation. One had just lost the final symbols of his service. The other was being ordered to carry them. William spoke first. "I did not ask for this." Harry looked at him without warmth and replied, "You never have to ask." Then the younger brother walked away before the prince could answer, leaving one sentence behind like an accusation that had been waiting for years. The future king returned to his office and moved the briefing folder out of sight. A royal patronage is an official bond between a member of the family and an organization, while the sovereign holds the power to assign or remove that bond. Palace offices then arrange the practical transfer with military leaders, ceremony planners, and royal staff. That process mattered because every change would soon become public. Catherine found William staring at an empty desk. He told her that refusing the roles might be the only way to prove he had not wanted them. She answered with painful clarity. Refusal would not restore Harry. It would only leave regiments without an authorized representative, families without support, and ceremonies trapped in the same uncertainty. William met a senior military advisor that afternoon. The officer explained that personnel needed someone who could attend events, speak for service families, and act without constitutional confusion. One organization had already postponed an anniversary program because officials could not determine whether Harry could appear in an official capacity. The delay had embarrassed both the palace and the regiment. The prince listened without triumph. He understood why Charles had chosen him. He was the heir, an active royal, and already carried defense duties tied to the future of the crown. Yet the king's instructions allowed no compromise. William could not accept selected patronages and leave others untouched. The transfer had to be complete, ending split authority and future arguments over individual appearances. William finally reopened the folder and signed his acceptance. The decision did not feel like victory. It felt like responsibility shaped by loss. Once his name entered the system, palace machinery began moving at speed, and Harry would soon discover how quickly a lifetime of association could be reassigned. The decision had been painful in private, but its true force became visible when names changed, invitations were rewritten, and the military world began adjusting to William's arrival. By the next morning, the transfer was no longer merely a royal order. It had become a chain of practical changes moving through offices, regimental headquarters, and ceremonial calendars. Letterheads were revised, invitations were withdrawn, briefing books were reprinted with William's name in place of Harry's. The speed was deliberate. Charles wanted no period of confusion. But for the son watching from afar, each administrative correction felt like another door closing on the life he had once understood. Palace officials moved quickly. They informed every affected military organization that William would assume the patronages at once, with future engagements arranged through his household. A royal household is the team that manages a senior family member's official work, staff, travel, and public duties. Ceremony planners also reviewed uniforms, insignia, speeches, and programs, so no event carried the wrong name or authority. Harry received the updated anniversary program on his phone. He scrolled toward the ceremonial address and found William listed as the new patron. The word struck harder than the announcement itself. He locked the screen, placed the phone face down, and said nothing. Megan found him beside a box of old military photographs and medals. She watched him lift one photograph, then lower it again. The Duchess asked what hurt most. Harry answered that the army had been the one place where his worth was measured by action, not birth. Now the service remained his, but the public bond had been handed away. William faced a different pain in London. An equerry, an officer who assists a royal with military and ceremonial duties, presented the insignia connected to one new role. The prince tried it on, then asked the equerry to remove it. The officer hesitated before obeying, sensing the weight behind the request. Nothing about it felt ceremonial or proud. He would not wear it publicly, he said, until he understood every duty attached to it. Charles received confirmation that all organizations had accepted the change. Relief never came. The king looked exhausted and asked his private secretary whether Harry had acknowledged the final notice. The answer contained one sentence: "I understand what has been decided." That calm response unsettled the monarch more than open anger. William then learned his first appearance would take place within days. There would be no time for grief to settle before the transfer became public. So the future king made an unexpected choice. He asked to speak with Harry directly, without Charles, advisors, or palace language between them. The institution had completed its work, but the brothers had not, and one unguarded conversation would determine whether the transfer became an act of humiliation or something harder to define. For once, there were no courtiers to soften the words, no prepared statements to control their meaning, and no father seated between them as both king and parent. William called Harry directly and asked for 10 minutes. The conversation lasted nearly an hour. It did not repair years of damage, but it stripped away one dangerous misunderstanding: the belief that the elder brother had engineered the transfer for his own advancement. What remained was painful, but at least it was true. William made the call before his first official engagement as patron. A patron is the royal figure formally linked to an organization and expected to support its people, attend key events, and represent the sovereign. He believed appearing in public without speaking to Harry first would make the transfer feel deliberately cruel. Harry answered with caution. He warned that he would end the call if it became another defense of palace protocol, the rules guiding royal conduct and official duty. William agreed. No aides listened. No prepared words stood between them at last. The prince said he had opposed the speed of the transfer, but accepted the final order because the military organizations needed permanent representation. Harry asked whether he understood what it felt like to watch another man wear symbols tied to his own service. William admitted he could not fully understand. Then he said the roles would never erase the person who had carried them before. Harry remained silent, but the anger shifted. William revealed through the private call that he had instructed his staff to preserve every reference to his brother's military record in historical material. The future king would not allow new programs to pretend the connection had never existed. That promise mattered. The patronages carried public authority, but they also carried memory. If William treated them as trophies, Harry's worst fear would be confirmed. If he treated them as inherited duties shaped by sacrifice, the transfer might still preserve a small measure of dignity between them. Harry did not forgive Charles, and he did not accept the system that had removed him. Yet he acknowledged that the order came from the king and the structure of royal service, not from a secret campaign by William. William then promised that his first address would honor everyone who had served the patronages before him. He did not say Harry's name, but neither brother misunderstood the meaning. Silence filled the final seconds. Neither man said goodbye. Harry finally spoke. "Do the job properly." William answered, "I will." The brothers had reached a fragile truth in private. But outside that conversation, cameras, headlines, and gathered crowds were preparing a far more ruthless verdict. The first public image carried more power than the palace statement. William stood before serving personnel wearing the insignia of his newly assigned role, his expression solemn rather than victorious. Within minutes, the photograph appeared across television screens and newspaper websites. Some saw continuity, others saw replacement. But one detail transformed the entire moment. Before speaking about his own responsibilities, the future king paused to honor the service of those who had carried the bond before him. William arrived at Wellington Barracks for a fictional anniversary ceremony surrounded by serving personnel, veterans, and military families. An anniversary ceremony is a formal gathering marking the history and service of a regiment or organization. The palace released a notice describing the transfer as a consolidation of active royal representation under the heir, meaning one working royal would now carry the official link, without divided authority. The prince began with restraint. He recognized those whose courage and commitment shaped this association long before today. Harry watched the broadcast privately and understood at once. The sentence had been placed there for him. His expression softened, not because the decision had changed, but because his service had not been erased from the story. Charles watched from his residence. The king heard William honor the past without turning the speech into a family defense. When the address ended, he gave one quiet nod and switched off the television. The monarch had gained clarity, yet the cost remained inside his own family. Public reaction hardened by mourning. A major newspaper carried a full-width photograph of William, in ceremonial uniform beneath the headline, "The Heir Takes Command." Beside it sat a smaller image of Harry during active service, turning one front page into a brutal contrast between present authority and past sacrifice. A national presenter called the event, "A visible transfer of duty from the king's absent son to the son who will one day inherit the crown." Outside Buckingham Palace, visitors gathered in debate. Some praised Charles for ending uncertainty. Others held handwritten signs thanking Harry for his service, refusing to let official removal become personal erasure. The message became unavoidable. Harry's military record remained respected, but his authority to represent the crown had ended. William now carried the patronages in public, while his brother carried the memory of having served them. Harry did not mistake respect for restoration. William had protected his history, not returned his position. Charles understood the difference too, and the king faced a question no notice could answer. What remained between father and son afterward? The uniforms had changed, the headlines had been printed, and the transfer was complete. Only the private verdict of the family remained. In the end, Charles achieved what he intended. The military patronages had one royal representative. William accepted them without triumph. Harry lost the official positions but not the history he had earned in service. The order resolved an institutional uncertainty, yet it exposed the painful truth at the heart of modern monarchy. Duty can be reassigned with a signature, but identity cannot. The crown settled the question of authority. It could not settle the emotions left behind. Charles met William after the ceremony and thanked him for handling the transfer with restraint. The king admitted that the prince had protected the dignity of the appointments without pretending their history began with him. That mattered because a royal patronage is an official bond between the crown and an organization, but its human meaning is built through years of trust and service. William accepted the roles as obligations, never prizes. He promised to support serving personnel, veterans, and military families, while refusing to use the appointments to diminish Harry's record. The future king understood that authority could pass to him, but sacrifice could not. Harry reached his conclusion. The Duke knew his military authority had ended permanently, yet William's first address helped him separate the loss of royal position from the truth of what he had done. The appointments could be reassigned. The years of training, deployment, danger, and loyalty could not be confiscated. Charles faced the cost alone that evening. He opened the transfer folder, read Harry's acknowledgement, and closed the file. Then the monarch placed it in a locked cabinet. The gesture carried finality. He had imposed the clarity expected of a sovereign, but the father inside him understood that order had widened the distance between them. The brothers did not fully reconcile. Still, their private conversation prevented the transfer from becoming another false accusation. Harry knew William had not engineered his removal. William understood why accepting the roles carried moral weight. The monarchy delivered its verdict. Active duty, constitutional consistency, and one chain of representation came before personal attachment, even when the emotional price fell on the king's own son. One brother stands before the regiments as their appointed royal patron. The other remains part of their remembered history as a veteran. Between them lies a decision neither made together, but both must carry. The order ended Harry's official military chapter, but its meaning was unmistakable. The crown could transfer his patronages to William, yet it could never transfer, rewrite, or remove the service that made those roles matter to him. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.